Hello and welcome to this webinar where we are looking back at DVB World 2025, which took place in Munich last March on the 18th and 19th of March. We're looking specifically at the unconference day at DVB World and asking what happened next. Now, here are some photographs from the event, and these are photos specifically from the unconference day. And that there is me. My name is Eoghan O'Sullivan. I was the host for DVB World, and I will be your host over the next hour for this webinar. So before I go any further, I just want to do a quick little bit of advertising for next year's event, which will be on the 17th and 18th of March. As somebody who was born in Ireland, 17th of March will also be a celebratory day for me, it being St. Patrick's Day, but we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. We will be in Amsterdam this year at the Postilion Hotel and Convention Center, which is in the south of Amsterdam, and we will have again our conference, which is a half-day conference. We'll have our exhibition area, and we will most certainly have our unconference, which is the subject of today's webinar and is really the main focus of this event and has been for the last 4 years. It will be our 5th time to run an unconference at DVB World. I do want to encourage you, we haven't officially opened registration yet, but we have opened registration for exhibitors, and I want to encourage you to sign up and join us either as a sponsor or an exhibitor. We have 2 confirmed exhibitors already, very grateful to them, OnScreen Publishing and ST Engineering iDirect, and several others in the pipeline, but they're the first 2 who are confirmed. And there is a discount available until the 15th of December, a 10% discount on the costs. Just to give you a quick at-a-glance look at what you get. As a sponsor, you get 3 event tickets, an exhibitor you get 5 included. There's brand visibility both at the event itself, before and after the event, in various publications. Obviously, the exhibitors also get a space in which to exhibit, and also they have a 1-minute pitch on the stage during our conference. The pricing is there, so particularly if your company is planning to send a few people to the event, even if you're not planning to exhibit, why not sign up as a sponsor? It's only €1,000 for DVB members, and you get those 3 tickets, but you also get the additional visibility, and it really helps us to offset the costs of hosting this event. Now, let's take a look back to our unconference this year. If you're unfamiliar with the unconference, well, the main thing I'll say is that that agenda that you're looking at there was empty when we started on the morning of our unconference, and within about 30 to 40 minutes we had filled it with all of these session proposals, and it meant we had a full day of discussions happening in parallel across a range of topics, with the idea being to try to focus on outcomes and try to focus on things that could come out of these discussions and out of this event. We're going to run through every single session that happened. I have many of the session hosts with me, and we'll have a brief chat with them. But just quickly to run through some highlights that came out of DVB World this year. We had the creation of our DVBI Implementers Task Force. We had the development of a technical architecture for DVB streaming in our TM Stream group. We've had significant community support for the development of a DVBI trial in China, the completion of a proof of concept for a DRM encrypted stream in a DVBI context. We've had communication activities around DVB's NGSO specifications, that's non-geostationary orbit satellites. And we've had lots of valuable input for DVB's ongoing strategy development. So the first person I'm going to talk to this afternoon is Emily Dubbs, who's our head of technology. Emily is with me here. Emily, you pitched this session on breaking silos and building bigger, greater collaboration with SDOs. I think you had a good discussion in Munich. Tell me a little bit about that discussion and what came next.
Hi, Eoghan. So indeed, that session was, if I can say, the goal were multi-layered, because the overall goal was to foster a more scalable and interoperable media streaming ecosystem. where the blocks could be not only interoperable, but also interchangeable. And that idea initially came from a member. It was Thomas Cameras, several times pushing for that, and I was very much aligned with that. So I thought that a session in DVB World could help to define some steps that could be helping us to go toward this goal. So that's I would say, the higher level goal. And then there are other ones which are indeed to have a better collaboration between the SDOs to identify this, because that media architecture would not only rely on DVB solutions, but also on, in some cases, other specifications. But the thing to be understood for that session was that we wanted to get, in the end, in the longer term, an ecosystem where the interfaces are very well defined, and that brings transparency for the market. So
Sure.
to do so, yeah, we have decided several things, as you wrote on this slide. And the main decision was to start creating an architecture where we could be, where we'd see in a clearer way which components can be done with which blocks, well, technologies and vendors. In the end, we have this has been taken over by the technical group in DVB that indeed defined a technical architecture, because
sure, I'll move on to that slide just so we show that
yes,
we don't actually have Rafael Mercuria with us today, but he hosted a session, not just by chance, but a separate session to discuss this from a more specific architecture and technology point of view. And so switching between those two slides, we see we have a kind of a yellow light on the bigger task and the bigger next steps there, whereas we have a green light on the technical architecture, because that work indeed has done, and DVB members can access it already in that TM stream document, and it is probably likely to be published as a DVB Blue Book in due course. But take us, I know you had an initial follow-up call on this higher level kind of view of
that goal maybe was a bit too high, and we had a call to discuss whether, for instance, so due to DVB's position in the industry, we thought, I thought that we could perhaps have an overarching role on that coordination within across the SDOs. But in the end, we decided that action from the technical group, would be a start. Sometimes you need to start with small things to build bigger ideas, because that would be the start of a discussion to bring to other SDOs to initiate the discussions. So it's kind of, I would say, in standby, starting first with a technical, so an architecture, but taken from a technical view. And then that one will help us identify the gaps or overlaps, and that will help us to start a discussion with other SDOs.
Sure. So probably something that we will take up in some form at DVB World again next March. And if people are interested in contributing to that topic and moving that effort forward, they should certainly reach out to you, Emily, right?
That would be great. Thank you.
Excellent. Thanks for joining us, Emily, today. And thanks also to Rafael for his contribution here. We have Reinhard Biehn with us from BMT in Germany. Reinhard, you held a session at DVB World looking at privacy and GDPR issues for DVB-I. I know that afterwards you had several discussions as a follow-up to that session with manufacturers and so on. Can you tell us a little bit what happened after the session and what the status is now?
Yeah, I can tell you that. So the idea was to discuss how to achieve these issues with broadcasters and also with TV manufacturers. At the end of the session, we thought using the A177 release 6 would be the solution, because for each and every service list which is chosen by the users, you can display an app with information on which servers are accessed and so on. But in reality, it turned out that manufacturers are planning to use to do the implementation based on A177 release 6. Which doesn't have that possibility. So we
Sorry
had
to interrupt you, Reiner. I realize we should, for people who are not familiar, we should make clear that the A177 are the blue books, the DVB-I spec in DVB blue book form, and they are the respective releases in each case. So obviously R7 is the most up-to-date release, but you're saying that the manufacturers are focusing on release 6 for now.
Yes, thank you for the clarification. Right, that's also the basis for the ETSI standard at the moment. So this is the basis for the implementations for next year's devices. So we changed our mind on that, and that's also laid down in the German implementation profile now. So we are currently, and next Monday there's maybe a final discussion on that. We are planning to make sure that all accesses to content provider servers might go through a proxy, and in that case, it wouldn't be a big problem concerning data privacy. So this is the way we are planning to go. This has to be confirmed by the manufacturers as well, but I think this might be a very good approach, at least for the first generation of devices. Maybe the forthcoming generation will be based on release 7 then, which would make life much easier, because then we could inform the users for each and every service list what's happening there.
Great. Thank you, Reiner. And I think I'm pretty confident that you would agree the discussions you had at DVB World were very useful in the context of this work.
I agree, yes.
Great. So we'll see you hopefully in Amsterdam next year. Thanks for joining us today. For the next sessions I want to look at, we are joined by the chair of our promotion and communications module, Mr. Elved Howells. Elved, I'll flick to the 2 slides that are relevant here and then go back to them, and we can look at what happened. You hosted 2 different sessions here that were kind of looking at the same broad topic, but one inward looking to a country and one outward looking from that country. The first was helping with work towards a DVB-I trial in China, and the second one, sorry, I'm getting confused here. I'm going to skip the second one for a moment. There was another session that you helped with the hosting of, which was proposed by Alan from Huawei, which was looking at how DVB can help manufacturers, not just in China, but any manufacturers, to produce DVB-I devices. And in between those 2 there, I have the other session that you hosted. You were very busy in Munich, Elved, this year. The other session you hosted, which was on new use cases for DVB-I. Maybe we start with this.
Them one by one, maybe?
Go for it.
Yeah. So the first one is was really, although it's entitled "Helping China to Launch DVB-I Trial," actually it's pretty generic. It's to help any country who's interested in moving forward with DVB-I towards technical verification and trials. What are the steps that need to happen? So we had a really good session. We had some excellent inputs from our colleagues in Italy who have been through this process already. They provided us some really amazing guidance. And that turned into a document or a guide at the end, which was 16 steps to a DVB-I trial, where we laid out 16 different things that you would try to put in place to ensure that you could have a smooth trial of DVB-I. It sounds like a lot of things, but some of them are just good hygiene, just making sure that that you have your things in place before you start. And since then, we've actually set up a monthly call with China, where we actually walk through those 16 steps and see where they're up to on each of those points, which has proved very successful. I think that means there's some quite good momentum coming from China at the moment. We had an update at IBC from a large team from China who were telling us about what they've done so far and what their plans will be. There's some ambitious plans for the coming year in terms of moving forward with those trials. So pretty much we've followed up pretty well. There's an active call on that and an active group of people who are supporting. And if anybody else wants the 16 steps, if we have another country who are interested, then we are more than happy to share that. The next one was new use cases. So as part of my presentation at DVB World, I touched upon some things that perhaps DVBI could do, which it currently is not particularly, it's not the first use case, but could be a use case in the future. These are wild ideas which potentially could become reality. So, DVBI as a YouTube type platform without an operator. So you put your content on there directly, put your channel up if you like. So something like that. Using DVBI as a socially driven platform. So that would be things like being able to tweet links to various programs and various channels using DVBI metadata. Being able to dynamically offer content depending on where you are and how much bandwidth you have, and things like the kind of hotel type of use case. So those were some ideas that we put forward. I'm happy to say that we then put those forward to the commercial modules, a commercial module on DVBI, CMI. And that group have discussed those and now are taking those forward as part of the work they're doing into looking at new use cases. And then the last one I think was perhaps taking a look at what the profiles should be for different parts of the DVBI hardware. So from that point of view, we were getting a lot of questions, predominantly from China, but from elsewhere as well. What hardware do we need to make a DVBI device? And then what does the middleware need to do? And then what does the app need to do on top of that? So we had a really good discussion on those three areas. And there was a recommendation that perhaps DVB should look carefully at different levels of profiles, let's say, so that people who are making hardware can be sure that their hardware is up to the task. People who are making middleware can ensure the right hooks are in there, and then people who are making clients have the right requirements for the clients themselves. That also has been put into CMI, and they've discussed that as part of their work. So, something may come out of CMI at some point, and we may get some more guidance. Thank you.
Elved, thanks for being with us today, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you.
I should mention in passing, there are traffic lights in the corners of these. The traffic lights refer to whether we actually carried out the next steps on each of these sessions. We're not talking about the wider goal. Obviously, a lot of these are big topics that require work that isn't just completed in a matter of 6 or 8 months. So it's not a green light to say that we have necessarily developed all of that you've described there, Elved, at this stage, but we've at least done the step of having that needs discussion at DVB World and bringing it back into our working processes within the DVB project.
Indeed, and this did drive. I mean, Alan himself, who hosted this session, did bring an example box to IBC where he had, let's say, put this into practice and bought a box that people could comment on and to try out for their trials. So it's actually moved into something concrete.
Excellent. Thanks for being with us, Elved. We turn now to Thomas Wrede, who is actually just down the road from the DVB project at the ITU this week. Thomas is the chair of the CM Satellite Group. Now, Thomas, you had a discussion at DVB World to look at whether there might be new work items for the satellite industry. I think it was a good and lively discussion.
Yeah, thank you, Owen. We had indeed a very good session or unconference session at DVB World 2025 in Munich. I think over 20 participants, lots of DVB members interested and affiliated with the satellite industry. And we discussed DVB S2X, we discussed RCS2 for NGSO, and we, of course, try to identify new potential work items. So we had some ideas of maybe introducing another profile, another waveform profile for DVB S2X, and we refer to that as low energy type waveform, making it easier and more efficient for industry, for manufacturers to implement DVB S2X. But it turned out that there was not that much interest. We continued those discussions in a CMS meeting on 27th of March 2025, and again, still no sufficient commercial interest to identify and to justify a new DVB work item.
Sure.
So,
but that said, I mean, I think, Thomas, would it be fair to say that at least there has been a lot of activity around the satellite area, and it has been focused on this NGSO area. So that's where a lot of the energy has been going for the moment.
Yeah.
We don't have David Pilo with us, who hosted the next session that I want to mention, but I know that you're across this work as well. And the fact is that DVB has done all of this work in the last few years on updating its already top quality satellite specifications for non-geostationary uses. And that work was the subject of a discussion at DVB World, which really led to a new impetus and a new momentum around promoting those standards.
Yeah, I must say, of course, David Pilo, a co-chair in the CMS subgroup, is with his ESA background, is a constant source of ideas and inspiration for us. I have always enjoyed frequent discussions on the phone with David. And indeed, CMS, I mean, we have been, in terms of commercial requirements, instrumental for NIP recently and for RCS2 over NGSO, which is a standard that's actually implemented by an operator. And so far, this is, I would say, a success for DVB. Still, of course, as chair of CMS, I'm interested in identifying additional work items and continue the work for the benefit of the DVB members.
Exactly. So thank you for being with us today, Thomas. Good luck at the ITU this week, and hopefully we'll see you in Amsterdam next March for next.
I hope so as well. Thanks for this webinar, Eoghan.
Great, thank you. Next up, I'm going to ask Raj Patel from Yotta Media to turn on his webcam. Raj, you took a look at what was and is still a very hot topic, which was DRM, and it was specifically DRM in the context of DVB-I services. Up to now, DRM has been handled mostly through the use of HBB TV apps, so to do the handshaking and so on. But of course, HBB TV will not always be available in the context of DVB-I services, including those that need encryption. So you had a good discussion about this in Munich, and there's been quite a lot of activity since then.
Yeah. So from Munich, basically, we were able to look at where the use cases were and understand that from a native decryption point of view. And at IBC, we were able to sort of demonstrate that proof of concept as a feasibility study that helped to work out some of the signaling requirements based on an operator, and then look at what the gaps were and basically bring that back to the CMI task force and provide that information around that signaling, the concepts, and then also the other issues that we have to resolve. And then that created from the CMI task force group some requirements that would go out to the various other groups. And that's what Ranjit has done to go back to TMI and also to DVB Stream, etc., because there's other requirements that have to go to the other bodies, to working groups, to then tease out the technical requirements. But essentially, we've proven that it kind of works, and we go from strength to strength there.
Excellent. So we'll come back to the task force aspect of that in a moment. But I think the main point I'd want to make here is that we demonstrate again that at DVB World we can have a discussion around these topics, clarify some of the bases on which we can proceed, and then we move on to action. So you did this great work along with OnScreen Publishing on putting this proof of concept together.
Precisely. Yeah.
So thanks for joining us today, Raj. Hope to see you in March at DVB World.
Absolutely.
Talk to you soon. I'm going to ask Matthew Huntington, in his capacity as chair of Secretary to the Steering Board of DVB, to join us now, and it's to discuss two sessions, one of which he hosted, and we'll come to that in a moment, the other of which Thomas Stockhammer, who cannot be with us today, hosted. But actually, really, the action on the what happens next here fell somewhat to you, Matthew, in your capacity as Secretary to the Steering Board, and by extension to DVB's ongoing strategy study mission. So Thomas held this session, which was a little bit provocative, and he was asking, from the point of view of being a member who has to go back to his management each year and say, hey, we're going to remain a member of the DVB project because we do this and we get this and this value. He asked some of these questions. What would happen if Qualcomm, in this case, were not to be a member? What would be the impact if they did the work elsewhere? What would be the downside if DVB were to close? Difficult questions, and it led to a good discussion. Now, Matthew, you undertook to bring those questions back into the strategy study mission. Can you confirm that that has happened, at least in part?
It's happened at least in part, but not, to be honest, not fully. There's quite a lot of work for the strategy study mission to kind of work through, but I think it's mindful of, you know, all of the work that strategy study mission is mindful that as an organization it needs to be appealing and work for members. So we need processes, procedures, etc., that will support what the members want and what the members need. And so exactly. that session that Thomas organized is a good reminder to us that we need to follow that, and hopefully we will see more progress come out of that of strategy study mission along those lines.
Exactly. Organizations like DVB should not shy away from those kind of, as Thomas called them, existential questions. You also hosted a session yourself, which was about making DVB more developer friendly. Now, this is a work in progress to an extent, but we have seen some progress since DVB World.
Yeah, I think I would be only give myself an amber signal on this one, but I'll take your generosity there. I was going to say that on this, it was actually quite a spirited discussion because there wasn't necessarily agreement that there was a problem that needed to be solved, and if there was a problem, how best to solve it. But one key thing that has happened since DVB World has been which was announced at the DVB World, was the establishment and running of the DVB UI competition, which stimulated interest from over 30 developers were interested in it. Ultimately, we had 11 entrants, and those entrants have just been entries have just been dispatched to our judging panel, who will be judging it over the rest of the month, and that gives us actually points us as an active group who aren't necessarily DVB members, but have been interested in DVBI, and it gives us a group to try and actually post the competition to understand what they struggled with and what could we have done to help them. I feel through the competition we asked people if they wanted help, and didn't get many requests. Got some, but didn't get many requests for help. But I'd like to scratch a bit further to find out whether there are things people struggled with, and there is more work that we could do to do that, and then give that a little bit more direction. Just on the strategy study mission, it is one of our topics in there, but as we've progressed through the year, it has not been one of the topics that we've tackled yet. And as I say, I think having some solid information from the competition entrants to inform that, rather than it just being necessarily the views of non-developers on a discussion about developers.
Good, excellent. I'm not going to call it a downgrade. I've changed you to an amber light there, as requested, because amber represents opportunity and possibility, right?
Yeah.
That's how I'm framing it in any case. Thanks for joining us today, Matthew, and we will certainly be seeing you at DVB World in March next year in Amsterdam. Next, I'm going to invite Jim Higgins from RTE to join us here. Jim and Bram Tullemans, who can't be with us from the EBU, jointly hosted a session at DVB World looking at two related aspects to DVB-I. One of those was to share implementation challenges, very broadly speaking, with implementing DVB-I, and the other was looking at a specific sub-challenge, which is extending the scope to include video on demand. Now, Jim, this was one of the sessions that certainly we can see what happened after, because you've been joining almost weekly calls since DVB World as a result of this session, right?
That's correct, Owen. In fact, it was a very well attended session. There were 35 delegates in attendance, and I often hear you say, you know, if the right people are in the room, well, they certainly were in this case. So we had a very wide-ranging discussion that began with a question: what lessons have we learned in DVB-I pilots and proofs of concept and trials to date? It quickly turned into a healthy exchange of views and opinions from both the broadcaster side and the manufacturer side and other stakeholders around what we have, not only what we've learned from our tests and trials so far, but also the jobs that need to be done to get DVB-I towards a real and wide-ranging sort of public launch. Certainly from the point of view of practical outcomes, the green light, I think, is very well deserved here, largely because of the contributions, not only of all of the stakeholders involved, but in specifics with relation to Ranjit Kaur, who, having listened carefully to the discussion, proposed that we create an implementers task force to take some of the challenges that were identified. And not only did she propose it, she ended up chairing the group, which has been, as you say, very active ever since. So as a session, it was extremely practical. It made us think about profiles and how to create the kinds of profiles that work. It made us think about manufacturer concerns like the installation journey and how these things are handled. And then issues, as Raj mentioned earlier, around DRM, and that has actually again been taken on by the Implementers Task Force. So
exactly,
overall, a very successful session.
Indeed. And I mean, I think I can't stress enough that prior to DVB World, we did not go into DVB World thinking, oh, we must see if we can come up with some sort of implementers task force out of DVB World. You went into that session with this intention to do a little bit of sharing and exchange between those who were implementing. And what emerged out of that discussion, where we had people who are implementing in the trials, we had people like DTG, we had EBU, we had the project office from DVB in there. And what emerged was this idea to actually put together this implementers task force. As you say, Ranjit from DTG put her hand up to take on the chairing of that for us. And that group has been probably the most active group since DVB World, in that it has had weekly calls, very well attended and very productive, generating all sorts of useful go forward momentum across several of these topics that are important to implementers.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think it's important to state that there is a real sense of momentum working within this group, and of course in DVB generally around DVB-I. So it's this session and those who participated helps to both contribute to and drive that momentum.
Yes. Now, I will say that one other topic which kind of didn't get as much time as it might have done at that session, because there was so much discussion around these implementation challenges, was this question of scoping video on demand within DVB-I. And I know that Bram Tullemans has put together some initial requirements for that to bring to CMI. But certainly the headline news out of this session was the Implementers Task Force. And I'm grateful to you for joining us, Jim, and for your continued contributions to that work. And we'll see you in March on St. Patrick's Day
Sure you will.
in Amsterdam.
Yes,
Great.
we surely will. We'll have to celebrate St. Patrick in some form or fashion. We'll work something out.
We will, Jim, we will. Thanks for joining me, Jim, today. The next session, neither of the session hosts were able to be with us, and it's kind of an ongoing work. So in this session, Christian Kluckner from WDR and Rainer Kirchknopf from ZDF had this session to really emphasize the need to promote DVB-I as an opportunity for smaller platform providers. In terms of concrete actions, this was really about the ongoing work of the DVB Promotion and Communications module. I've given it an amber light here because there isn't a specific thing that I would specifically tie back to this session that has happened, but certainly many activities at IBC this year, at other events and workshops, continue to do this job of having targeted and relevant communication around DVB-I. Another session where unfortunately we don't have the session host with us, but I do have good news to report in terms of at least the topic continuing to be on the agenda at DVB, and that is this topic that Patrick Lanto from Visi proposed, which is content protection for B2B distribution. So distribution, for example, to hotels and to hospitality environments and so on, and to look for potential technologies to allow that redistribution and re-encryption of protected content in those environments. So that topic has been brought back to the DVB commercial module and to the relevant subgroups. For now, there hasn't been quite the support needed to move it forward to an actual work item, but I know that discussions are continuing on that topic. Another where we do not have the host with us, but it's kind of another one of these high-level discussions around DVB-I. Vincent Grivet, who is the chair of the HBB TV Association, hosted a discussion in Munich specifically around some of the challenges that might come up as DVB-I scales. I know that it was a useful discussion. No specific next steps to tie back there, but I was in Istanbul last week at the HBB TV Symposium, and I can report that DVB-I was mentioned often and regularly throughout both the conference and the unconference at the HBB TV Symposium. So together, the HBB TV community and the DVB community are looking at these challenges for scaling DVB-I. Now, I'm checking. Yes, I do have John Piesing with me. John was not sure he'd be able to actually speak, so I'm not 100% sure if John is. I'm just watching to see if he's unmuting his microphone. He has unmuted. John, come in, John Piesing. I'm not sure we can hear you.
Can you hear me?
Ah, yes, we can hear you now, John. Thanks for joining.
Sorry, I'm on a train, so I've had to find somewhere where I can speak without annoying too many people.
Well, I appreciate that, and we won't keep you too long. John, you hosted two sessions specifically at DVB World. One looked at the future of DVB Dash, and the second looked at improving DVB's verification and validation, open source, etc. On DVB Dash, you discussed options for the future of the DVB Dash spec and ecosystem. What happened next?
So the driving factor for this was MPEG Dash and the 6th edition of that. And that's been continually delayed, not by MPEG, but by the ISO bureaucracy who are responsible for publishing it. But it should be published soon. There is a draft presentation which contains a feature analysis of what's new in Dash 6th edition, which has been reviewed with Dash IF. And when we get to some confidence about MPEG's publication schedule, then we will have allocate some discussion time to reviewing that and looking at what Dash 6th edition means to be, which features are relevant for us, which features are extremely irrelevant for us, and so on. And that will feed into what would have been the next edition of DVB Dash. Now, it might be the next but one, depending on what comes out of some of the discussion that Jim was making about. Okay, excellent. I've given that one a green light simply because the next steps were taken in as much as they can be taken. Yeah. If Dash doesn't, and I know that DVB members have been invited to and participated in some of the meetings, as you said, of Dash IF, which is now part of the SVTA. The second session that you hosted looked at identifying opportunities to improve how DVB does its V&V and open source. I put an amber light on this one. We were involved in the plug fests, but... Well, we weren't really. I mean, DVBI was tested extensively at Plugfests, but it was tested. I mean, DVB was not hugely involved in the Plugfests as an organisation. Just lots of DVB members here.
Yes, but DVBI did feature strongly.
And the other thing worth mentioning. Oh, yeah. Absolutely. The other thing worth mentioning is we as DVB have continued to sponsor the evolution of the Dash validator. That was formerly from -IF, but not at the moment. So that's been a variety of features have been added or are due to be added in the remainder of this year. We are doing the very boring grunt work to do things like updating it to the current version of PHP, things like that, without which you suddenly find you either have unresolved security bugs or people not interested in contributing because. So that would be the things listed on that. But yeah, I'm agreeing with Yellow.
Yes, indeed. And I think we can be fairly confident that there is always a spot on the unconference agenda at DVB World to look at these kinds of topics, get heads together and see if there are things that we should be doing. So, yes, I think. Thanks, John. Thanks for joining us from the train and happy onward journey. Next, we turn to energy efficiency, and we have Erik Reinhard, who is the chair of the CMEE, the Commercial Module Energy Efficiency Group at DVB. Erik, you hosted a discussion in Munich at DVB World. There was a good discussion there, but I think it's fair to say that we continue to have some challenges in terms of generating momentum around this topic.
Yes, hello, and hello everyone. Can you hear me okay?
We can hear you, yes.
Oh, good, because I'm doing this on my phone. I lost the use of my computer just minutes before the meeting. Yes, we had a good session, about 17 people in the room. So the smallish room was full. We explained what the energy efficiency group is all about, and we have had also everyone else have their say, which led to a very lively and interesting discussion. Very pleasant. The purpose was to see if we could get some more members to join the CME group. So the first point of order after the meeting was to see if people would actually connect. Now, this turned out to be more problematic than I thought. People did not actually come to our meetings, which is disappointing. So we have gone to an effort with my colleagues at InterDigital, Ralf and my colleague Valerie, to do a specific outreach to members we think are interested. That doesn't stop me from wanting to say here and now that if you're hearing this and you're interested, please reach out to me or Ralf, who is also on the call, and we can have a good private discussion and see how your views can be incorporated in this group. An amber light at this point is I believe also quite generous, I have to say. There's work to be done.
Well, thank you for joining us, Erik. I mean, we know this topic and the wider topic of sustainability is not going to disappear as a priority. It's something we will continue to discuss. There was a session on this topic in Istanbul last week for the HPB TV symposium. Unfortunately, not many companies have identified how sustainability and energy efficiency contributes to the bottom line, at least enough to the extent that they commit the resources to do this. So we continue to encourage them to do so, Erik, and I wish you every success with the renewed effort to move forward on this topic within DVB.
Thank you very much.
Thanks. Your colleague from InterDigital, Ralf Schaefer, is with us now. Ralf, thanks for joining. We had a study mission on volumetric video in the DVB project over the last couple of years. It produced a very interesting report, which covered the ground very well. You wanted to raise this topic again in Munich to kind of take the temperature on the topic within the DVB community and those who attended DVB World, and see whether now is the time to move things forward with some concrete work items on this in DVB. Tell us how things look at the moment, Ralf.
Yeah, thanks, Owen. Yeah, indeed, the session in Munich was pretty interesting. As you said, we had this study mission published in February 24. So S101 is the document here. That the volumetric video means that you can watch at content from any camera direction. It's up to you really to choose then that. So this is really a new feeling to experience content. So we discussed notably, okay, what are use cases for that? For example, sports, to replay an exciting moment in sports, for example, and then watch it from different angles. You could have the news speaker in your garden if you use for example, HMD, a head-mounted device, the speaker in your garden, and you enjoy the news there, that you could put your favorite singer in your living room, for example. They're very good examples. Of course, it is not any TV content or films. In fact, that is not the content. It is specific content. This is what we found out. But we also discussed, for example, blocking factors at the moment, because you would need a new production system that can capture the persons or objects from all angles. It needs some new equipment. That is niche content at the beginning. Okay, not everybody has an HMD, but we also discussed the usage on tablets, for example, on TVs. And on tablets, of course, you can, when you put your finger on the tablet, you could, for example, change the camera position. On a TV set, you could have a more sophisticated remote control, with an interactive sort of trackball that you could change the angle, for example. So there are ways for doing it. We are at the start at the moment. So I think there was good feedback. But at the moment, it's probably that it is still a niche, and the production costs that is making that maybe not so many people in DVB jump on the train.
Sure.
So we concluded like this. So since then, I have not recontacted DVB members, but I have still that in mind, knowing that in other organizations there's really, I would say, some traction. So I just noticed here, for example, 3GPP published recently a report on Beyond 2D that includes all these formats that are needed, but also they, for the moment, conclude, okay, that broader adoption is not yet there, and they launched a new study on a technology called Gaussian splatting, which is a better way, even, okay, how to get higher quality, and this format is in development, for example, in MPEG. And MPEG also provided recently a new compression standard for dynamic meshes, which is also an underlying representation form for volumetric video. And Metaverse Standards Forum will organize a town hall next week, so November 25th. So on their website, you find this. If you're interested, connect. It is free. There you can get then the latest update on volumetric media. So I think quite some things are ongoing, and I still think it's also a topic really that we should further discuss in DVB, because either on TV sets or tablets as a companion screen can be fully used for consuming volumetric video.
Yes, and I know, as you said there yourself, Ralf, you have a kind of ongoing action item to raise the topic again with relevant DVB members and take the temperature on a kind of an ongoing basis. So I've left that as an amber light on that one as far as the session is, and maybe we'll hear from you on Gaussian splatting in Amsterdam in March. Thanks for joining us today, Ralf.
Yeah, thank you very much.
We have Gordon Maynard with us. Gordon, you hosted a session where you said it's all about the data, DVB-I, and the action that came out of that was identified was that we needed to talk to the people who provide the metadata for television services.
Yeah, thanks, Owen. I mean, this was a chance to drill down into one particular area of deployment, which is getting the live data through the system. You know, we've spent years talking about specs and receivers and head-end systems. And now that we're getting to real deployment, it's really come home to me how important it is to think about the data sources and to make that data as dynamic as possible. And in some of the deployments I've been involved in, you know, we really take the services up several levels by not only getting live data, but also making that data work together. So we took the opportunity here to identify the various data sources, which broadly comes down to channel management systems, scheduling feeds, and on-demand availability information. And there are also some other technical things you can do, like satellite transponder configuration. So making sure that what is in your DVB-I service list matches what can be quite a dynamic configuration on a satellite. And we were able to collect that information and talk about how, you know, for example, with Serviu, we've been able to take schedule information, on-demand information, merge it together and create a forward-backwards EPG, which pre-DVB-I would be quite a challenge, but we were able to do that just by merging those data feeds. Mm-hmm. And yes, you're right that there are contractual issues, organization issues. One of the things we found also was that, you know, generally broadcasters and platforms have all the data they need already. It's just not in the right place and not quite in the right format. So there's that challenge of bringing the data together to make it all work and to create a really powerful presentation for the viewers. There was this specific action to engage with major providers. That's Amber is fair there, because that has taken place in depth with one provider, which is Babel-I. That's been a very interesting exercise because Babel-I are very experienced listings providers, but we were able to discuss with them the specific formats of that DVB-I requires, which is largely TV anytime anyway. But there's all these subtle things like how do you handle multiple languages, different length synopses, different levels of title, genre. We have a lot of fun with genre, getting those to match. And so it's been an interesting exercise with them. They were very keen to engage and learn about DVB-I. They felt it was a little bit early for them to be a sort of a major market. But it was a very useful and interesting exercise in bringing them up to speed, but also teaching, from our point of view, what is involved in getting data to go from one format to another to drive DVB-I.
Yes, and so that continues to be ongoing work. Even if that particular provider felt it was a little bit early, it's a necessary step forward, and we will need to do the same thing with some of the other providers.
And yeah, and also there's an interesting thought that it may change the market a bit, because DVB-I has this concept of the content guide, which is effectively an open repository, which anybody can link to if they know about it. That potentially changes the business model, which is built on selling feeds of schedules. Wow. So that's an interesting contractual thing that may come up in the future.
I was just going to say that there sounds like a potentially interesting discussion to have next March in Amsterdam at DVB World, but I'll leave that for you to ponder.
That could well become a subject in itself, yes.
Yes, indeed. Thanks for joining us today, Gordon, and carry on the good work with DVB-I that you're doing. Two more to go through quickly. We don't have the hosts of either of these with us. Johan Bolin, who was one of the panelists at our conference, but also hosted an unconference session, was looking at this question of whether we should be getting rid of the broadcast era paradigm of curated content streams. I know there was a good discussion at that session. I know that Johan had an action for himself, which was to read the Object-Based Media Study Mission report that came out shortly after DVB World. I'm not sure, to be honest, if he did that or not. So nothing specific to report on that one. And this last one, well, it was the action in itself. Andreas Waltenspiel, who many in the industry know quite well, was with us in Munich, and Andreas offered, just because our agenda was open and had the space for it, a masterclass in public speaking. And he had several takers for that, and we hope that all of them saw their public speaking skills improve after that session. I'm going to ask our chair, Remo Vogel, who is with us, to join me for the last couple of minutes of this webinar. Remo, this webinar has been about looking back and in between the lines looking forward as well to DVB World next year. As chair of DVB, where do you sit on the unconference format at this stage?
Well, at first I have to say I'm quite impressed when we see some of these reports. You all know that I didn't check our preparation before. So it's quite new for me to have this overall overview. And I'm quite impressed what the outcome is, which was triggered by the DVB unconference. I think so. DVB is an organization which is dedicated to create commercial value for our members and for the industry. And on one hand, DVB is a standard specification body. On the other hand, DVB is a community to cooperate on solutions. And so the DVB World Unconference is exactly the opportunity to use any momentum which is in the air to cooperate on topics.
Sure. And I mean, one of the intentions of having this webinar today was in a way to check in on ourselves, to be fully transparent about this. We hold ourselves to a higher bar than perhaps many commercial conferences do. It's always fun to go along to a conference, hear some presentations, maybe do a bit of networking, and then you go back to the day-to-day. What we're saying is that if you come to DVB World, and if you participate in these unconference sessions, well, the expectation is that you may come away with some actions, and we may well come back and check if you took those actions. So it's a chance for us to really do a check-in while we plan next year's event in Amsterdam.
Exactly. So I completely agree. So I really myself, I even enjoy the unconference a lot. I would love to extend this to 2 days, to be honest. So since it's so worthy and interesting, and for me it's even hard to miss. Many of these sessions, which are really in my personal scope, I wasn't able to attend there. So I would love to double myself here. And I'm looking forward for our next year. And and this is a combination even. So we even seen, okay, there is already our concrete outputs in the air from the unconference. A few topics were solvable instantly with all the experts around. Others created work items which are partly already done. And so I think next year will be a mixture. So maybe we have to, or we can follow up with a few of these work items. Maybe we create new ones. This is a very interesting process where we are.
Exactly. Well, Remo, there is only one Remo Vogel, so you can only be at one on-conference session at a time. I'm sorry that we can't change that for you. You will, of course, be with us next year in Amsterdam on the 17th and 18th of March. Registration is not formally open yet. We're working on the conference program and we'll be opening registration in the coming weeks. What I do want to encourage those who are watching us today on the webinar or watching later, particularly if it's before the 15th of December when you're watching this, is to sign up to be a sponsor or an exhibitor at DVB World next year. There's a 10% discount on the packages until the 15th of December. With all of that said, I'm going to thank you for joining us today and thank you for being on this webinar, and we hope to see you in March next year. Thanks to all of our hosts for being with us today. Goodbye.